Hello guys, I'm creating this video for us to practice together so that you can complete your PAT 2. So the scenario that we're going to be practicing in this tutorial is not your PAT 2. Just take note of that, but it is similar in nature that you can use this tutorial to learn programming concepts, flowcharts, IPO charts, based on the practice scenario that we're going to be looking at, and then use the same logic in your actual PAT that you would need to do in class on Visual Studio. So let's dive right in. All right, so first of all, let's take a look at the instructions. So you will be on your PAT. Remember, this is our scenario that would be for practicing, but on your PAT, the layout would be very similar. You will be given a description of the task. Then you would be given two tables with information that you need to incorporate into your program. And then you will be given a user interface that you need to design. And then you would get a rubric that tells you exactly what is expected for successfully completing your PAT. So this PAT is going to be divided into three sections. The first part is planning and design that has to do with your description, your IPO chart, your flow chart, and the second part is the coding of your program. And the last part, part 3, has to do with documenting your program, such as implementing code comments, entering accurate test data, and time management, such as submitting your PAT on time. So let's take a look at the scenario that we are going to be practicing. So a description of the task. The management of Brew and Beans Coffee Shop has asked you to design a desktop application that allows cashiers to take and calculate customer drink orders. The cashier must be able to select a coffee blend from a list and select a syrup from a list. The program must calculate and display the subtotal, VAT amount, and amount due. Then we are given our two tables. The first table is the coffee blend table. So we see two types of coffees or coffee blends. We've got a house blend that costs 35 Rand, and we've got a blend that is called single origin that costs 40 Rand. Our second table is our add-on table where the syrups are listed. So we've got a caramel syrup that costs 8 Rand, and we've got a strawberry syrup that costs 10 Rand. So if we look at our user interface that they give us, where does the coffee blend and the syrup actually fit in? So you can see it fits into the two combo boxes. So our first combo box is where the user would select the coffee blend. And when they select the coffee blend, the price for that coffee blend must be displayed on the label next to it. So, for example, the house blend costs 35 Rand, as we saw on our table. House blend, 35 Rand. Then the second combo box is our syrup. So, for example, if the user selects caramel syrup, then the price needs to be displayed next to the syrup as 8 Rand, as is shown on our table. Now, once the user has selected the coffee blend and the syrup and the prices for these two are displayed, then the user can click on the calculate button. Once the user clicks the calculate button, the program is expected to calculate the subtotal, the VAT, and the amount due. So the subtotal will be calculated by adding the price for the coffee blend with the price for the syrup. The VAT will be calculated by taking a certain percentage of the subtotal, and the amount due will be calculated by adding the subtotal with the VAT. Then our clear button will clear our combo boxes and our labels, and our exit button will close the program. It should show a message box, and then if the user clicks yes, they want to exit the program, then we close the program. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with coding. We're going to start with designing the user interface and start coding. Then we will move on to the IPO chart and the flow chart. So just to relate this back to your PAT 2, to show you guys if this makes sense or not. So let me try to minimize it a bit and compare it a bit so that you can see what concepts you will learn from this practice video that you can actually apply in completing your PAT as well. So this video should help you to essentially do your PAT. That is the goal. But it is not your PAT on its own, because you need to learn through the experience of practicing. So just by comparing the two, you can see on our left side is your PAT, and on our right side is the practice that we have looked at now. So again, on your PAT, you will also be given a scenario. Your scenario is given here, and it's a pizza shop, and you are given a pizza flavor table and a toppings table. You can see how it relates to the scenario from our practice, where we have a brew and beans coffee shop, and we have a coffee blend table and a syrup table. So instead of a coffee blend table and a syrup table, on your PAT you have a pizza flavor table and a toppings table. Then you are also given a user interface on your PAT, the same as you get a user interface on the practice scenario that we are going to do now. It also has a combo box, two combo boxes, one to select your pizza flavor, and the pizza flavor price needs to be displayed. The other one is to select your topping, and your topping price needs to be displayed next to it. And then when the user clicks calculate, the subtotal VAT and amount due needs to be displayed. The rubric is the same. You need to create an IPO chart, a brief description, and a flow chart for task 1. For task 2, you need to code the program, and for task 3, you need to document the program. Remember that your IPO chart, your flow chart, and your user interface and your code will depend on the scenario. So the goal is for you to practice how to work with these components so that you can be given any scenario and be able to achieve the same result. So let's get back to practicing. So I will keep this open for us in the background. I'll practice scenario. And first of all, let's open Visual Studio 2019. All right, guys, with Visual Studio 2019 open, let's create a new project. Remember, we are looking for a forms, Windows form application that we need to code, and it has to be in Visual Basic, Windows Form App, Visual Basic. So we select that option and we click Next. Then we need to give it our project a name. So it's your student number. So I'm just going to put in a few ones, then underscore your initials, so FW, then underscore your surname, then underscore ISD, underscore that 2. And then you click on this checkbox to place the solution and project in the same directory. It just makes things easier to have everything in one folder. Then we click on Next, and then we click, the framework would be dependent on what is installed in class. So for this one that I have here, it's .NET 10. So we click on Create. And now Visual Studio will create our new empty Windows Form application that we can start coding. All right, guys, from here, let's first of all change the title of our form. So remember, it's our student number or our ID. So let's just put in a bunch of ones for me and click enter. When you change the text of your form, you will see it reflect on your form as well. So you can just click save. Then let's do the user interface design. So let's quickly look at what is expected of us again so that we can grab those components from our toolbox and move it to our form. So quickly look again at the user interface. So we need a label, we need 2 group boxes and 3 buttons. So let's get that first. Then we'll look at what we need to add inside the group boxes. So let's do that. So first of all, I'm opening my toolbox and I'm looking for a label. So I can just position my label here. And then I am looking for a group box. I've got a group box and I want another group box next to this group box. And then I want buttons, 3 buttons. So button, let's just see, something went wrong with that button. Just delete it. Okay, 3 buttons. So let's add another button. Oh, why it did that? Let's undo. Toolbox, add a button. Okay, just give me a moment. Button 1 and button 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's change the text of our label. We want it to be Brew and Beans Coffee Shop. So we click on our label control and we change the text to Brew and Beans Coffee Shop. We click enter. Now we need to modify our label. So if we still click on the label, we need to find the property that says auto size. So auto size is true. So let's change that to false so that we can resize it as we want. You see, we can resize the label now if we change the auto size property to false. And then we need to change the font, right? So let's look for the font. Let me just close this properties windows. I see it's a bit buggy. Let's properties windows again. All right, guys. So if this happens to you where one of the windows, like the properties windows, is not responding, like we saw, I couldn't scroll up, and closing the properties windows and opening it again did not resolve the issue, then just remember to save your project, close Visual Studio and open your project again. Usually it is just the Visual Studio IDE that needs to be opened again with your project. So my properties window is functioning again. So let's go back to the Brew and Beans coffee shop label. We changed the text. Now we want to change the font because we want to make it bigger and we want to make it bold. So let's make it bold. We change that to true. And let's change the size to, let's see how 14 looks. I think that looks about right. So we have auto size off, right? Or false. So that's why we can resize this label as we want. And let's position it to the center. Remember to save your work. So let's look back at the user interface. Next, we need to give our group boxes some labels or some text. So the first one is coffee order, the second one is receipt. So we click on group box 1, we look for the text property, and we call it coffee order. And the second one, we change the text to receipt, right? And then let's make it bigger, resize it a bit so that we can fit in our other controls inside these group boxes. Make it a bit bigger still. Okay, let's save. Let's see what do we need inside our group boxes. We need 2 labels. So let's start with the coffee blend label and the price label for the coffee blend. And then we do the combo box and the price label for the coffee blend combo box. So let's do these 4. So let's go back to Visual Studio, Toolbox. We look for a label. So let's put our label. Let's move it over here. And we need another label. Move it to our combo box over here, our group box, sorry. And then we need another label to display the price for our selected coffee. Then we need the combo box. Okay, let's just see why that issue occurred. So combo box. Okay, we've got our combo box. Let's move it inside our group box. And we can position it there. I think we need to make this a bit bigger. Our form, let's scale it a bit so that we can move this group box to the right. And so we can make this group box a bit bigger. And let's move the combo box down a bit. I think that was better there. And let's move this to the side. So let's change the text for our first one. So text is going to be coffee blend. Remember that auto size is off for the label, or it's on. So let's just double check for the auto size property. So auto size is true. Let's make it false. And let's resize it properly so that coffee blend displays like we want to do. Coffee blend and our group box below it. Then our label over here needs to be price. Press enter, click on that label. Click on that label, look for the auto size property, make it false. So that you can resize it. And let's do this one as well. So auto size should be false. And remember, we need a border around this. So let's look for the appropriate property. So we need to look for the property border style. Let's make it fixed single, and we need to remove the text. There we go. Now, something that you guys can do that will speed up your coding or your development time, because now you see we have our price label and our price display label and our combo box and our coffee blend label. We need the same for syrup. So instead of going to the toolbox and dragging each of these components one by one for the syrups, let's select the components that we want to, or the controls that we want to copy. And we just change the text accordingly to show syrup instead of coffee blend. So you click on the first one that you want to copy, then you click on the control button on your keyboard, keep it in, then click on the next control you want to copy. So you see we've got two selected. Still keep the control button pressed on your keyboard, select the combo box, and still keep the control button in and select the next control that you want to copy. So we want to copy all four of these controls. The shortcut key is Control C, and to copy, it's Control. You click the control button on your keyboard. While keeping the control button in, you click on C to copy, and then the control to paste, or the shortcut to paste, is Control V. So as you can see, we have copied the coffee blend labels and combo boxes. Right, so we didn't have to go to the toolbox and drag them individually. Okay, so before we proceed, let's just change this text for this label so that we remember to do that for the syrup. So that needs to be syrup. So let's change the text. Syrup. Okay. Now let's save. Let's take a look at what needs to be in the second group box. So we need 3 labels and also 3 labels with borders. So 6 labels in total. So let's go to our IDE. Let's first copy this one because it is essentially the same that we want on this side, and we want 3 of them. So click on it, click the control button on your keyboard, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And then we just move it. Then Control C again, Control V to paste, and we move it. Control C again, Control V to paste. This is just a way to speed up the design of your user interface. You could naturally go to your toolbox, put in a label, and change the border style to be, so the border style to be fixed single, and you take the auto size off so that you can resize it. All right, so border style is fixed single, as you can see here, and the auto size is set to false. All right, so auto size. Over here, the auto size is set to false. That's how we can create labels with no text inside and give them a border. Now I'm gonna copy this label, and so Control C, Control V, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. Do another Control C, Control V for this one, and the Control C, Control V for this one. And then this needs to, the text of this label needs to change to subtotal, and the text of this label needs to change to that. and the text of this label needs to change to amount due. Okay, so let's just make this group box a bit bigger, and we click on save. Let's move our buttons down a bit and click on save. Let's quickly look at the UI from our instructions. So you see we've got a label here at the bottom as well where we would need to display the amount due. So it has to be a bit bigger than the others. So let's add that label. So we go to our toolbox, we look for label. Again, we put it here, we move it into our group box. We, first of all, you change the border style from none to fixed single so that we can have a border around it. Then we need to change auto size. So we look for auto size. Look for auto size and we need to make it false so that we can resize it how we want to. So let's resize this one like so. And we need to remove the text because the text will be generated by our programming code. So we need to remove the label 14 text. So there we have that. Then let's change the text of our button. So our button is calculate, then clear, then exit. So let's change the first one. So text is calculate. Resize it. And let's change the font. Let's look for font. Let's make it bold. And I think that is sufficient. So let's do the same for the other two. So we said the second one is going to be clear for the text. And the third, let's also bold, make the bold true. And the last one is, let's make the bold true as well. And this is going to be exit, right? Let's double check. Yeah, exit. This is going to be the text for this one is exit. Okay, then we save what we have so far. So far we have designed our user interface with the controls that we need based on the instructions that were given. If we look at this image of the user interface that was given, it matches what we just designed over here. So next, before we proceed with the coding, before we actually start coding, let's name our controls that we will be coding, that we will need to reference, so that the user will interact with or that will change value. So what controls will change value or will need interaction with? It would be this combo box, right? Because the user would need to select the coffee blend. It would be the syrup combo box, this combo box, because the user needs to select the syrup. It would need to be this price label because the price for the coffee blend needs to be displayed, and this price label for syrup as well as these three price labels for subtotal, VAT, and amount due, and your final label over here. So let's name this coffee blend combo box. We go to the property and we look for name, and we change it to CBO, and let's call it CBO coffee, and let's select this label and we go to the name and we call this one coffee LBL, coffee price. Okay. So next one is the combo box for syrup. So we click on it, we look for its name, for the name property. So we change the name property to CBO syrup. And we change the name property of the price label for syrup to LBL syrup price. Then let's change the name for this label for subtotal. So let's make it LBL subtotal. And let's change the name for VAT so that we can use it in our code. LBL VAT. And let's do for amount due. So we change the name for amount due, LBL amount due. And let's also change the name for our last display label. So let's call it LBL display. Then let's lastly just name our buttons. So our calculate button should be called BTN calculate. Our clear button should be called BTN clear. Our exit button should be called BTN exit. Alright guys, so now we have our controls on our user interface and we've named our controls that we're going to use for coding. Now let's add the items to our combo boxes. So let's start with the coffee blend. What do we need to add? If we look at the table that we were given, we need to add house blend and single origin as the two options the user can select from. So let's click on this little black arrow there, edit item. So house blend is our first one, then enter, then single origin is our second one. And then you click OK. Let's quickly just test it out to see if our items are being displayed. If we click on the drop down, so let me just move this to the side. So if we drop down coffee blend, yes, those two are there. We still have nothing in syrup. So let's stop debugging. Now let's do the same for syrup. So remember we have caramel and strawberry. So let's add the items, edit, so caramel and strawberry. We click OK. Let's test quickly. Let's double check. Coffee blend is still there. Syrup is still there. Okay, let's stop debugging. Next, we want the value of our price labels for our coffee blend and our syrup to change when the user selects a particular coffee brand, a coffee blend or syrup. So for this, it's an event on the combo box because when the combo box value changes, then we need to change the value of that label. So let's double click on our combo box to go to the code. So you see it automatically opens private sub and there's the name of our control, right? CBO coffee. And what is the event? Selected index changed. So this means when you change or select a different option from your combo box. So inside this private sub for our CBO coffee combo box, that is where we need to put in an if statement to see what is selected. And based on what is selected, we need to update the price. So let's start with an if statement. If then. So if the control that we want to work with is CBO coffee, and the property that we want to look at is dot. So we want selected item. If CBO coffee dot selected item equals, now we put in double quotes the item that we want to see is selected. So if the item that we are selecting is, let's go there quickly. If it is house blend, so let's copy that. If it is house blend, then what do we want to happen? We want the text of our label to change, this label to change. So let's do that. So LBL, coffee price, and the property that we want to change is the text property, and we want to set it equal to how much was the coffee blend for house blend. It was 35 equals to 35. All right, guys, so next we need to do the second option that is for our coffee blend. So CBO coffee dot selected item. If it is equal to single origin, then we also want something to happen. What we want then is our LBL coffee price dot text to change to what's the price for single origin? It is 40. So we want it to be equal to 40. And that is it. Remember to save. So this is a if statement to change our price label text based on what the user selected for the coffee blend dropdown. So I'm just putting a comment here. So remember, comment is in a single quote for documentation so that we can keep track and document our code. So let's make a comment change coffee blend and save. Let's quickly just test it out. So we press the play and we move it in. Let's see what happens if we click house blend. The price changes to 35. Let's see what happens if we click single origin. The price changes to 40, which is what we have coded. If we look to the syrup, nothing happens because we have not coded the event for our syrup combo box. So let's do that next. Let's stop debugging and save. We can go to our form design. Let's double click on the syrup combo box. And here you will see again the name of your control, which is CBO syrup, and the event. So again, it's when the index change, when we change what we select. So let's first of all add a comment. Let's say change syrup, so that we know this is what we are coding for. So let's do the if statement. If CBO, so let's look for our combo box syrup, CBO syrup dot selected item equals to, what did we have? We had caramel. Remember the casing, the spacing, and inside the double quotes needs to be exactly the same as the casing, spelling, and spacing inside the items in your combo box that you've added here. We can't have caramel with 2 L's here or in a small letter and then go reference caramel with 3 L's here or with a small letter here and think it will work. It won't. They have to be exactly the same name as that you've given in your combo box when you've added that item. So what do we want to change when we change the selected item of the syrup combo box? We want the price for the syrup to change. So LBL syrup price is what we're looking for. Dot text is equals to how much is it going to be if we select caramel? It's going to be 8 Rand, right? So it's equals to 8. Then we do else if our CBO syrup dot selected item equals to our second option is strawberry. Sorry guys about the dogs in the background. I am recording from home. Then we want our LBL syrup price dot text to change to what is the price for caramel. For strawberry, it's 10 Rand. So click on save. Let's quickly test it out. So let's change it. Caramel shows 8. Strawberry also shows 8. So we've got a problem. Let's double check what we did here. So I think this has to do with what I just told you guys, that the items in your combo box needs to be spelled and spaced exactly the same as you reference it in your code. So let's see what I did there. Let's go to my syrup items and see. You see, I made a spelling mistake here in my items that I added. I said strawberry. So let's correct that. Strawberry. Click OK. Let's go back. Let's double check that I am calling the right or referencing the right item. Let's save. Let me try again. So let's do syrup. Caramel is 8. Strawberry is now 10. Let's just test our coffee blend is still working. Coffee blend is still working. Great. So let's move on. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, guys, is so once the user has selected the coffee blend and the syrup, they want to click calculate so that the prices show, or so that the subtotal VAT and amount due is calculated. So what happens if the user does not select any of the inputs for coffee blend or syrup and they click on the calculate button? So at the moment, nothing, but if we start using variables where we want to pull the price from our user interface and that's blank, then we're going to run into a runtime error. So first of all, we need to code for that so that we show a message box to say you did not select a coffee blend, or you did not select the syrup when the user has not selected it. So and this will happen in the event of our calculate button. So let's double click on our calculate. Again, you see a sub procedure opening for the calculate button. If you scroll up, you would see all the other sub procedures that we've coded already. Our CBO coffee and our CBO syrup. Now we are in our BTN calculate. So what we want to do is we want to do an if statement to check that the coffee blend has been selected. So if we do an if statement and we call our CBO coffee dot, this time I'm going to use selected index, which means the index that is selected from the options that are there. So it starts at 0, 1, 2, 3 as we start counting. So if it is -1, the value, the selected index, that means nothing has been selected. So if CBO coffee dot selected index equals -1, meaning nothing has been selected, then what do we want to happen? We want a message box to show. So message box dot show. Inside our message box, inside our two brackets for our message box, we need 4 arguments or 4 parameters. The first one is the message we want to show. We want to show select a coffee blend, right? The next one is we want to say a heading for our message box. We want to say, let's say error, because it is an error. The user needs to select the coffee blend before they can click on calculate. Then our next parameter or argument, our third one is going to be the message box buttons that we want to be displayed. For this message box, we only want to display the OK. So message box buttons dot OK. We only want the user to be able to say OK. Read the message OK and click OK. Then our last one is the icon that we want to display. So message box icon, and we said we're going to do an error. Box icon dot error. So let's save. Let's test it out. So what I'm expecting to happen is if I don't select a coffee blend, then I'm supposed to get this error message. So let's see if when I click the calculate button. So I'm not selecting a coffee blend, so our index is currently at -1. If I selected house blend, it would be at 0. If I selected single origin, it would be at 1, but I'm not selecting either. So it's -1, and I click calculate. There I get my message. This is the heading of our message box that we coded. We said we wanted to show error, right? Let me move this. Let me move this a bit so that we can look at the code. So remember we said we want to show select a coffee blend. You see, that's our first parameter here. We wanted to show error. We wanted an OK button, and we wanted an error icon. And when the user clicks OK, the message box goes away. Now let's do one for the syrup as well, because the syrup also, the user also needs to select the syrup. So we follow the same logic. If CBO, but this time it's syrup dot selected index equals -1, meaning we have not selected anything, then we want a message box to show. Message box dot show, and we want to show the message select a syrup, and the heading for our message box we still want it to be an error, and we also still want the message box buttons to be just OK. The user should only be able to click OK, and let's keep the icon consistent to make it also an error and an error icon. So let's test this out. Save, play, or start. Let me move this here. So if I don't click on anything, I get my first error and my second error because I haven't selected a coffee blend and I haven't selected a syrup. Now let me select a coffee blend. Our price changes and I'm expecting to only get an error select a syrup, which I do. And I get, let's change, select the syrup. When I click calculate, now I don't get an error anymore. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so let's continue. First, let's add a comment. Let's say validate coffee selected for the first if statement, and let's do a comment for the second if statement to say validate syrup. As you can see, this will help you to see what you've coded. Then below our if statement, we also need to do an exit sub, right? Exit sub, so that we exit the sub procedure if we run into this. Exit sub. Now, below our end if, now we can be assured that when we reach this point below the end if, that these conditions are false. The user has selected a coffee blend and the user has selected a syrup. So now we can declare our variables. So we need to declare the variables for our, what do we need? We need the coffee price from our UI, we need the syrup price from our UI, and we need to declare variables for subtotal VAT, amount, and amount due. So let's do that. Go to our calculate button below the end if. So let's add a comment, declare and initialize variables. So remember, when we initialize variables, we just give them a default value. It's to prevent null exceptions. So remember how we declare a variable, we say dim to declare in memory, and we give the variable a name. So let's call this coffee. So you should start your naming of a variable with the data type that it's going to be. So it's going to be a decimal. So let's say des and then coffee price. So dim coffee price as, what do we want it? Decimal, right? And we're going to initialize it. So we say equals to 0.0. We just give it a default value. Next, let's declare a variable for our syrup price. So again, des syrup price as decimal, and we also declare initialize that to be 0. Next, we need to declare our subtotals. So dim des subtotal as decimal equals 0.0, and dim des VAT, that's our next one, as decimal, and initialize it to 0.0. And the last one is amount due, dim des amount due as decimal equals to 0.0. So now we've just declared our variable. So remember to save continuously as you code. Okay guys, so now that we've declared and initialized our variables, the next step for us is to get the coffee price from the user interface and the syrup price from the user interface. And remember, we need to convert this into the correct data type, because we are getting it from the UI, the user interface. So how do we do this? So we say our variable name, des coffee price, is equal to, where are we going to get the price from? We're going to get it from LBL coffee price dot text, right? But you see, we've got a problem. We're going to have a problem because we declared it as a decimal, but coffee price, LBL coffee price dot text is most likely going to give us a string and not an integer or a decimal. So we need to explicitly convert the value that's being displayed on LBL coffee price dot text to be a decimal. So what is the function that we use for that? cdes, right? And in brackets, it's the LBL coffee price dot text. That will convert the price on the label to a decimal format so that we can use it in calculations. Next, we need to do that for the syrup. So des syrup price is equal to C des, because we need to convert it from our user interface. And where are we getting the syrup price from? We're getting it from LBL syrup price dot text. So you see why it is important to give good names to your controls, because we use it in our code. So let's just add a comment to this section so that we know we're getting price from UI and converting. Next, below this, we need to start with our calculations. Now that we'll have the coffee price and the syrup price, we need to calculate the subtotal. So our des subtotal is equals to our des coffee price variable plus our des syrup price variable, right? Then next, we need to calculate the VAT. So des VAT, or des VAT value for our des VAT is equals to, it's going to be our subtotal, our des subtotal multiplied by 0.15, because that is the VAT amount that we want, 15% VAT. Then we want to set the value for des amount due. So des amount due is going to be equal to our des subtotal plus our des VAT, right? So des subtotal plus des VAT. Okay, so let's add a comment here. Let's say calculations. Let's test out what we have thus far by clicking start. So nothing will actually display, now that I think about it, because we are just assigning the values when we click on calculate to the variables, but we're not displaying the values of those variables on these labels, right? So if we click calculate, nothing is showing here. So next we need to display the prices, or let's call it the receipt, right? So the first one is our LBL subtotal dot text is going to be equal to the des subtotal variable. Our other one is going to be the LBL LBL VAT, which is this one. So this is LBL subtotal, this is LBL VAT, and this is LBL amount due. So our LBL VAT dot text is going to be equal to des VAT. And then our LBL amount due is going to be equal to our des amount due. I forgot the dot text property. And now we can test it out. So if we click on the house blend, we see 35. If we click on syrup, we see 8. We click calculate, and 35 plus 8 is going to give us 43. 15% of 43 is 6,45, and the amount due is going to be the subtotal plus the VAT. So let's just change these to currency as well. Format them to currency, or let's save that for the last label. So let's stop here and go to the display for our final display, final label. So let's call it final display. So it's going to be LBL display that we called it LBL display dot text. Scroll down a bit. LBL display dot text is going to be equal to the amount due. So let's first of all say we want to say the amount due is and then the amount due. So or let's look at what our UI wants us. The amount due is and then the amount due in currency. So let's do that. So let's say amount due is, put a space there, put a plus, and then we say this amount due, and we format the this amount due to currency by saying .toString, and in brackets we put C to say currency. So let's save and test it out. So when we run it, we get, let's do a house blend, caramel, calculate. And you can see it is now 49 Rand. Amount due is 49 Rand. So we are basically almost done. The next step is to clear all our inputs. We want to clear our combo boxes and our labels when we click the clear button, and we want to show a message box to confirm that you want to exit when you click the exit button. So let's stop here. And now we go back to our design and we double click on the clear button so that we can enter its sub procedure. And let's start by clearing the combo boxes. So CBO coffee dot selected index equals -1. So there we are clearing the text box by saying we select nothing. And then CBO syrup dot selected index equals -1. Say that we selected nothing. Then we need to do for the labels. So LBL coffee price dot text is going to be equal to an empty string, which is 2 double quotes. We also need this for all our labels. So LBL syrup price dot text is going to be equal to empty double quotes. Then LBL subtotal dot text is going to be equal to empty string, and LBL bat is our next one dot text. It's going to be equal to empty string. Then LBL, what was our last one? LBL amount due, or second last one, dot text is equal to empty string, and LBL display, right? Dot text is equal to an empty string. Let's test it out. So we move it in here. Let's calculate. And when I click the clear button, everything is cleared. Now we need to code the exit button. So let's go to our design, double click on exit. And in our exit button, first of all, we need a dialog result so that we want to show a message box. Are you sure you want to exit? And if the user says yes, then only then should the program close. So for that, we will need to have to use a dialog result. So let's call this variable dim. Let's call it result as dialog result. And what is our dialog result? Our dialog result is going to be a message box. So is equals to message box dot show, message box dot show, and the message we want to show is, are you sure? Or let's do it, do you want to close? Do you want to exit? Want to exit with question mark. Let's make the header warning. Now remember, our buttons need to be yes or no so that the user can say no, they don't want to. Message box buttons dot yes, no, and let's make our icon a warning. So message box icon dot warning. Now that should show our message box, but we're not doing anything with the result. So for that, we need an if statement. So let's just add a comment here to say this is our message box. And then we do an if statement to check the result. So check message box result. For this, we're going to do if result, which is our name of our variable. If result dot yes. If the user clicked on the yes button, then me dot close. Then we want to close the program. Oh, I made a mistake here. If result, if our variable result is equals to, we can't just say result dot yes. We need to say if result is equals to dialog result dot yes, then me dot close to close the program. So let's save. Let's do that. Let's test it. So you see, if I click on exit, I get my warning. If I say no, the program still runs. If I say yes, it closes. Guys, so this is the end of the coding section. In the next section, I will explain briefly the IPO chart and the flowchart.